Tuesday Night War is over, and we will discuss who won and who lost, if there were any real winners or losers as well. AEW Dynamite coming up with some great news and taking a look at some of the champions currently and what could be in the future for AEW. And a special note from the Oracle on his cease and desist letter. But before we get started, timekeeper, ring the bell.
Welcome to the And Still a Wrestling Podcast, your weekly podcast covering the latest in the world of professional wrestling.
The boys are back in town for another episode, this time episode 11, really. It's pretty cool that we got past 10. We're going to keep going here. Joining me, I am Morgan the Casual. Joining me is Kevin the Oracle, and in Droover. You like how I did that, Drew? Like it?
Nice.
Yeah. Not Endeavor, in Droover. We could go back to the Authority, but I think you need multiple personalities when we're talking about wrestling because it's always good to stay fresh.
Mergers
as you
are
know.
involved, I guess.
Got to stay fresh like Chris Jericho. So we've got a ton of stuff we want to talk about. Obviously, we'll get into the Tuesday Night War and the aftermath of that. AEW Dynamite coming up this week. And I wanted to take a look at some of the champions. I wrote down all the lists and kind of where we're at as far as the roster goes, because it does seem like there's going to be the roster, at least for AEW, is getting healthier in the near future. So that's kind of good. I'm curious to see what you guys think and where they'll go for the end of the year. Again, this is the And Still a Wrestling Podcast. Kevin, the Oracle, I know you mentioned that you kind of wanted to start off with something. Kick the show off, if you will. He's on the mic.
Yes. Earlier this week, I was served a cease and desist from CJ Perry Enterprises. So I will go on the record as saying I apologize. There will be no more references to CJ Perry or her intellectual property. And that is all I'm going to say going forward. Thank you, Drew.
What
Thank
did
you,
I
Morgan.
tell you was going to happen?
I'm not going to comment because I'm not going to be a part of it either.
So it is. So the show must continue. So Tuesday Night Wars, what do we got? What are we looking at here?
Hey, it was a fun night of wrestling. Reminded me a lot of the Monday Night War days.
Yeah, there was that feeling of the early 2000s, late 1990s, where you kind of almost wanted to watch both. I know that I only watched AEW. I never flipped over NXT because I didn't feel a need to. I'm not that nostalgia kind of wrestling person. I'm actually more about the action in-ring matches, and I was not let down. I thought the opening match between Swerve and Danielson was fantastic. Even though Danielson lost, he stayed strong because he lost by by Swerve cheating. So he was able to get over and still be strong. I thought it was a great match. To be able to watch a match on TV and not have to throw to commercials was fantastic in my opinion. The first 37 minutes, I think we went without a commercial in AEW. So for an opener, for me, that was excellent, and that's what I want to see. Drew, I know you watched some NXT. What did you think?
NXT started off with Cody Rhodes, and I'm not gonna say it was as good as the wrestling match that you had on there. Cody kind of, he came in there, did his announcements, announced Dusty Classic. He's general manager for a night, set some things up. It's pretty stereotypical for what we're used to in WWE. I kind of felt like it ran a little long on that note. I think in like the first couple of minutes and stuff like that, yeah, it was definitely AEW was putting on the better show. I mean, I think they cut straight from that to Asuka and Roxanne Perez, which was a fine match, but I mean, it wasn't more than maybe 5 minutes long. Asuka still getting the win, but Roxanne Perez getting the rub, I guess as you put it, is like where she looked good in defeat. They're definitely pushing her, and all in all, it was a good night of pushing stars. But if we're talking about the first 30 minutes, where they both ran commercial free, it's like, I mean, realistically, AEW was the better show, but I guarantee you NXT had more people watching.
And Morgan, I know that you really enjoy Swerve Strickland. What did you think of that match?
Yeah, I thought it was a good match. I want to see more of him, and I think that him with Danielson was good. Obviously, I think he's a great wrestler, and just like I said, he's really to me one of their high level main event guys. Just to kind of give people some backstory in case they maybe missed it, which I don't know if you're listening to this podcast, there's no way you missed it, but according to the demographics, NXT had 921,000 and scored a .30 in the 18 to 49-year-old demographic, while AEW had 609,000 viewers and scored a 0.26 in the same demographic. So big difference there in the total amount of viewers overall, or the audience overall. And one thing that I felt like, honestly, it was a great card. Don't get me wrong. But it just kind of disappoints me to see that stat because they had been hitting 800s, basically they didn't have anything under 800 since May. May they had 776, and they had even in early of the year were getting into the millions. And
how much of that
see,
would you
609 was to me just a shock in a bad way.
how much of that would you attribute to the fact that it wasn't on its regular night and it was on a Tuesday night?
There's definitely something to that. I mean, I don't know if it's that is like that big of a difference, but yeah, there's definitely, some people who didn't tune in. But I feel like it should have gotten bigger just in the fact that it felt like this was a night where most wrestling fans knew, like, hey, we're all going to tune into them both.
Yes, most wrestling fans. We're clearly not most wrestling fans. Obviously, we're a bit of a on the higher end here as far as how much we follow and how much we understand. So your casual fan that just tunes in on a Wednesday night, has his beer after dinner, maybe not didn't know that they had moved to Tuesday that week, or maybe didn't hear the week prior. I gotta wonder. Well, I guess there's no way to consider it because you would have to have NXT move to Wednesday night to see if they could play off the same scenario again. So I'm saddened by the number because it is less than what I expected, but I also have to wonder how much changing nights hurt them. Now this week it's on Wednesday night again, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so no baseball. I'd like to see what the number bounces up to. Did we get any new people because people switched from NXT to see what AEW was about? I got to wonder if we're going to pick up any additional viewership this Wednesday. But yeah, I gotta wonder how much that number is reflected in the fact that people are used to turning in on Wednesday nights, and I gotta wonder how many people turned on TBS Wednesday night at 8 o'clock to find that it wasn't on.
I want
It'd
to
be
cover
interesting.
3 points real quick here about this. Number one, AEW deserved better than 650 or whatever it had. It's like it was
Based on the quality of matches.
Just show in general. It was a better
Okay.
show than the amount of people that tuned into it. Number two, I would be willing to wager NXT doesn't do that number again. This Tuesday. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a significant drop off in how many people tune in to NXT this week, unless Monday Night Raw is like loading up that show for some reason as we speak.
Well, tonight is the season premiere, isn't it?
Maybe. I guess
it
it
is.
might be. It's like
it is.
I never read anything into that. This is your excuse to like load up a show. It's like your Monday. It's like whatever. And the third thing I want to cover is it's like I believe this is the point I made. It's like the fact is with your casual and your just regular average wrestling fans. It's like I said, it's like which one are people going to go for? Are they going to watch a good high quality wrestling show with good wrestling matches, or are they going to tune in for nostalgia? 9 times out of 10, they'll tune in for nostalgia every single time. And like I said, it's like you could even hear it on Busted Open. I listened to them when they were talking about it. What were they super excited about? After 10 o'clock when the Undertaker showed up. It's like they just go nuts for him because nostalgia.
Crazy.
It's just really weird to me how it had to have been a lot of that. I think maybe it had to have been, I don't know. I almost want a recount or something, hanging chads or something, because when you look at the last, 20 to 30 weeks, they've been nowhere near it. I mean, building up to it, yeah, they got closer they got into the 800,000, but all year, 600, 500,000s and 0.13, 0.12, 0.15, 0.17. They were 600, they were 500,000, 0.13 on July 4th. You know, they were 700,000.23 on July 25th. Just September 5th, on September 5th, 673.18. So, I mean, a huge jump. And then you have AEW on the flip side, where you have literally everything is in the 800s to 900s, and everything is close to the 0.3, the 0.29. And then all of a sudden, this, I have to scratch it up to a different night. And, you know, maybe like Drew said, the nostalgia won. I did not watch NXT. I watched AEW, and I left satisfied. I thought it was a great overall top to bottom card, from Danielson all the way down to Adam Copeland. You know, there were stars in there on every match, and it seemed like you had a title change as well too. And you had a great, like I said, great match, almost a 5-star match with Danielson and Strickland. So, I mean, I don't feel like they deserve the number that they got, honestly.
Yeah, hey, side note on that too, real quick. You said like how you said you were going through the ratings and stuff. It's like, yeah, you notice how you mentioned an uptick in NXT's, you know, ratings somewhere along the point where they were like doing this number and they started increasing. Yeah, it's called when Becky Lynch won the NXT Women's title and Dominic Mysterio won the North American title, and now Judgment Day and Becky Lynch are consistently on NXT on a regular basis. It's like, the uptick you've seen in NXT is because they've added the main roster guys to the show.
So I mean, this was planned a couple of weeks in advance to be ready.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
They WWE knows what it's doing. And it's like they're doing two things at once here. Number one, it was to, you know, they wanted to stick it to, you know, AEW, whether they admit that or not. They totally, it's like, it's a WWE thing. They always want to stick it to all their competitors. But the second thing is also they're trying to shop around, because if I'm not mistaken, I think NXT is leaving next year, the USA Network, and they got to get it on another, you know, network now. So they're trying to make this show look as valuable as possible for ratings right now.
Yeah, we're talking ratings. We're talking, you know, house shows. We're talking ticket sales. AEW is definitely on a decline right now. I think you brought it up last week. Dave Meltzer called the product cold. I think what happened is you had a new alternative company hit the scene, and it did numbers that no one ever expected it was going to do right out of the gate. And it's incredibly difficult to maintain those numbers. The product is just as quality and just as fresh as it was 3.5 years ago, but they're not drawing. And I think part of that is the fact that they're trying to go to too many markets and too many places. And I think that the bloom is off the rose. What would the world look like if they pulled back to Daly's Place and ran shows at Daly's Place like NXT does at Full Circle or Full Sail? Sorry, Full Sail. What would you guys think would happen there?
I mean, that might show an uptick, but I would say they don't even have to pull that far back. I mean, they have to know by now that there are certain markets, certain areas they can take their show on the road to, and they'll do good numbers. I mean, even it's like I looked at Collision and I know like it wasn't great, but I mean, like if you really pan at like what WrestleTix was showing you, they didn't do a terrible job like losing, you know, like they didn't, you know, they almost sold the place out. It's just, you know, it's like 9 times out of 10 that, you know, hard cam area, they just keep empty and stuff. But like for the most part, it's more or less packed in there.
So you want to hear a staggering? Hold on 1 second. You want to hear a staggering fact?
Sure.
Full Sail holds 400 people. AEW runs 10,000 person arenas.
Yeah, big difference.
Huge difference.
And that goes back to what I was going to say to Drew is you're not selling out these arenas. You know, it's a 10,000 person arena and they blocked off 6,000 and they're trying to sell 4,000. And that's where I think to Kevin's point, it may be worth to avoid that negative publicity that you are blocking out a large majority of the arena. It's not a good look. Even though you are selling a ton of the open seats, you're selling, I say 80 to 90% of the open seats, but to have that many blocked out seats is pretty bad. It does not look good on social media. It's not a good look. Honestly, as Kevin was saying, I don't know how hard it is. I don't know how the travel works and the booking and stuff in advance and things like that, but why not do a Daly's Place twice a month, and have two travel locations, the other, like every other week, do a travel location. And then, that would be better on your wrestlers too, because they would know exactly where they're wrestling for 2 weeks out of the month and not have to travel. But maybe that's too drastic, but
I want to dwell on the fact that social media is showing these empty seats. I've been to a lot of pay-per-views, I've been to a lot of live events. It's misleading because, listen, I was at All Out in Chicago 2 years ago. The same area was blank because that's where the hard cam is. You don't sell those tickets. So when you see these social media posts, they're looking at the hard cam. When the wrestlers win belts or hold the belts up, they're holding it in front of nobody because there are no seats sold in that section. Now, I'm not saying they're not topping off the top areas of some of these arenas, because they definitely are. But the lower bowls in the areas that tickets are being sold, they are, I won't say full to capacity, but they seem to be a full crowd. So again, these social media photos that we're seeing are typically of the hard cam. Most of the ones that I've seen are from the hard cam, and there never is going to be people in those seats on a hard cam.
So
So the thought of them going to Daly's Place. Now I know that it's in the Khan family. I'm sure that there's fees involved and people to be employed and what have you, but that's an outdoor arena. I don't know how many people it holds, but it's an outdoor arena, so that does play into, wintertime. Jacksonville gets cold. Jacksonville can even see snow. We've seen shows run in the winter there. It can be a challenge, but I gotta wonder if they continuously sell these 2 to 6,000 seats in a 10,000 person arena. How long do you say, you know what, this isn't working? Let's go back to Daly's Place. Let's sell, I don't know, sell the lower bowl, 1,000 people, 1,500 people, and let's see if we can do what Full Sail does and have the same people in the audience week after week after week. Drew, you're just showing a photo, and that's the most recent photo from the other night when
what? No,
Starks
I'm not.
and Bill. Which
No,
one is that?
no. You see this picture? Look at the.
No, I
I
can't.
know they can't. I know people listening can't see it, but you guys can see it. That's the hard cam, right? And this is facing the hard cam, and you see all the empty seats, and right.
Yep.
That's a
yeah.
photo I took when we went to Dynamite in 2021.
Okay. So it
So
hasn't changed much.
that's what I'm saying. That was when CM Punk was on the show and major advertisements, but that area was still empty in 2021.
Yeah.
It's like I think the mistake is that is that the internet is trying super hard to compare, WWE with AEW, and it's like, and when AEW is doing really well, like they were in 2021, it's like they still weren't able to pack it out. But that's because WWE just has been in the business for decades and knows what they're doing.
Could we agree that going back to a Full Sail and selling, let's say, 800 to 1,000 seats week after week would be a good alternative? And it would be very similar to what NXT does. And then NXT takes it on the road a couple times a year. And they do some live shows. Allow that pent up demand for AEW shows in your local area to build, instead of going to your obscure arenas that have never been hotbeds and selling just a few thousand tickets. Let that go a year before you see them live, and then when you see them live, maybe you'll sell 8 to 10 to 12,000 seats. So
I
that's
will
my
say
thought on the
this.
whole situation.
I will say this though, it's like you could do that, and I think it could help and be useful. But I say all pay per views, you gotta have the pay per views out there
Oh no, I
in
get that.
different venues.
Yep, yep, totally get that. I want to call out the whole Tony Storm thing. I thought it was brilliant that they did the silent movie during commercial breaks. That's, I think, the
Yes,
first time I've ever not watched what's happening live versus a
I
commercial.
know.
I absolutely loved it. Not only that, I jumped on YouTube afterwards to watch the whole damn thing start to finish. Fantastic idea. Whoever thought of that, kudos because my eyes were glued to what the hell she was doing, and I don't even know what she was doing, but I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I am really loving her character.
All seriousness, that was a brilliant move. I definitely appreciate what they did there.
For sure. For sure. Did
Yeah,
I
I think
see?
that
Go ahead.
it's an interesting take and it's something that's fresh. And again, it just adds to that disappointment of that final number. And I guess we're just waiting on that final number, to see what they did. And you really shouldn't put your value and worth into that number because as a lot of the talent on AEW has mentioned, they're still putting out, and we've mentioned this on this show, they're still putting out great matches. They're still putting out, you know, they're still, to me, even though the crowd is not as high, like I said, they're still matching up two good wrestlers together and putting together great events all together. So and they're utilizing talent like Tony Storm in a way where, just a few months ago, I think this is where my brain was going with this. Just a few months ago, Tony Storm for me was like, meh, I wasn't really interested at all. And now, as Kevin mentioned, I'm watching a video of Tony Storm silent
Right.
in a picture in picture when I would normally go to the bathroom or something or go get something from the fridge. I'm actually like, no, let me see what Tony is doing in a silent movie. Like, I'm like, what am I doing, first of all? And why does it have me so captivated? I don't know, but I like it and I want more of it.
And it was original. I don't know of anybody who's done that before. I also like the fact that they brought back the cue cards even without Sammy, because Sammy's he's on concussion protocol. He Don Callis and Kanosuke Takeshita did the cue cards, and I thought it was brilliant. Again, it
Right.
works. We all watch it, right? Why not just switch it up if the guy that normally doesn't can't be there? I thought that was very well done. I really did. I enjoyed it.
Now the problem is you can't do that every single week.
Right.
So,
Right.
I'll be interested to see how they refresh it, going forward.
So, can we talk about Tony Khan's breakdown? After he realized he had
Oh
lost
my
in his
god,
tweets that he put out.
what was that
Oh,
all
should
about?
should we really talk about this?
This caught me off guard. Everybody, well, you guys know I don't follow X or Twitter. So anything that I know, you guys send to me, and I kind of look into that way. But it's probably not often that a millionaire either loses or gets told no. And from what you guys said, he didn't take it well, and it was a
Billionaire, probably, right?
billionaire, and it was a little cringeworthy. Is that correct?
Yes. It's like actually the funny thing when you mentioned it, my brain was I was thinking in my head is like I would rather talk about Tony Khan's meltdown than I would the one I don't want to talk about is like the the whole gimmick they did with the Bullet Club Gold and what was it Juice his roll of quarters and stuff like like I'm just want to say this. I get that the using the quarters and stuff is part of Juice Robinson's gimmick, but it was definitely one of those like they should have known better moments.
Yeah, though, I don't know how upset I was by that. I get it. It's in bad taste. But it wasn't like it was out of nowhere. It's storyline continuation, and it was something that he had shared 2 or 3 months ago as being a Jewish boy was having quarters thrown at him, and telling him, "Hey, Jew boy, pick it up." I understand the horrendous things that are happening, over in the Middle East right now, and I get that. And yes, this is a case of they should have known better, but I don't think there should be heat on Juice for this. I think there should be heat on AEW management in general.
I don't even know if there should be heat on it realistically because the fact that even MJF came back later and said, "No, that's what we're doing. There's a plan here. Just roll with it." And
Did I
he's the one
Just
who
roll
should
with
be
the
offended.
quarters.
It honestly, yeah, that's my only thing from it. Is like with everything that's going on overseas, like it just wasn't the best time to pull this, move.
did
But
did either of you see the Jewish, I don't even know what it was called, but basically MJF met with Bob Kraft from the Patriots,
I heard
and
about it.
and they talked about Jewish history and tradition and what have you. They played it during Collision. I caught bits and pieces of it. Um, I think they're trying to they're trying to submit an apology for something that may have been blown out of proportion a bit because again, this it's just bad timing. Bottom line is bad timing.
Side note for Morgan, because he'll understand this too. It's like now that it's like when they jumped all over it on the internet, it's like I also didn't realize how much Juice Robinson looks like the mascot for Honeycomb.
Mm.
No, seriously, go back and look. You'll know what I mean.
So I got it up on the screen as we were looking at it. This is what Tony Khan tweeted October 12th, right before lunch. He says, "This week, 2 active, decades-long rating streaks from 2 great legends were ended. With all due respect, until this week's head-to-head AEW on TBS versus WWE on USA, neither John Cena nor Undertaker had ever been on a WWE show with under 1 million total viewers and under 400,000 in the demo." So basically, it comes off as like sore loser. Let me find something to jab at. And it really kind of, to me, came off as pretty desperate.
Translation. Oh, that's a bad tweet.
Yeah, kudos for the creativity for him to come up with those stats. Wasn't there something that someone went after him at and he started messaging that person back directly? It had something to do with a school coach or something, and he just lit the guy up. Do you have anything on that? And maybe that isn't completely correct, but there was
I
something
think
where
I've heard about this.
he engaged with somebody on a one-to-one messaging, and
Yeah,
that
like
person
did he
posted.
DM somebody?
Yes, that person posted what he wrote, and from again, I didn't read directly, but it was very insensitive from what I heard. But again, that just shows you, a billionaire being told either no or that he lost, and this is what happens. And from all reports, Tony Khan is supposed to be a very genuine and nice guy. So it kind of goes against everything you heard about him. But when everybody's back is against the wall, people can go to some pretty dark places.
I think it's also just one of those like there was one of those tweets I know he's talking about where like, hey, something was happening with my mom medically, and I was helping her. And while this was happening and I was away, WWE, jumped in there and tried to like lure away some of my talent by asking them about contracts and something. So I mean, is that a good tweet? No, that's a terrible tweet to put out there. But on the other hand, it's like it does kind of like give an example of maybe to Tony Khan somewhere along the lines this got personal.
He does mention that he was triggered by the tampering that happened when his mother was in the hospital.
Yeah.
There was 2 known tamperings that he's come out and said, and one was WWE getting William Regal, basically having everything set up for William Regal, kind of knowing that he was coming out of contract. They had kind of lined it all up perfectly. That one, to me, wasn't as bad because he was coming out of contract and knowingly so. But Swerve Strickland, who we mentioned earlier on the show, had just signed a multi-year deal, and they were, basically trying to poach him as well.
They were trying to poach Adam Cole too, weren't they? Because that's the whole thing that Bobby Fish was trying to like, help, do Triple H a solid and see if you can't get those guys back to NXT.
Well, let's take a look at Dynamite coming up. Let's take a look at Dynamite coming up and see kind of what they have on the list. Because, we can kind of leave what happened last week behind. It is what it is. I still feel like that, there's a lot to love with AEW and where it's going and some hope going forward. Some things that are still scratching my head, and Kevin and I will duke it out here in a few minutes. But for AEW's Dynamite on October 18th, you have the Dynamite Dozen Battle Royale. Now, remember, this is one where they will be competing to then ultimately face MJF for the Dynamite Diamond Ring. He still has that ring. He has it like 5 years in a row. He's 4 years in a row. He's won it. So he's had this ring. Is there there's some rumors that there might be a newly announced wrestler join AEW, who is a trainer currently and going
Chris
to
Hero.
possibly join in on this battle royale. So there's that, and then also the other question
Kevin?
I have for you guys.
It's Chris Hero.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he's coming out of retirement.
And then the
cool.
other question I have for you guys is, do you think that MJF could possibly even lose the ring at all in the follow-up match?
So, riffing off of what we saw with the whole Jewish angle, I don't see him losing at all and anytime in the near future. Just from a, um, I don't know how to put it. It wouldn't be politically correct for him to lose right now. Let me put it that way. When you're getting him to do vignettes with Robert Kraft face to face, it wasn't like blue screen. They were together having a conversation about Jewish history. Sorry, the guy's not going to lose the belt anytime soon.
Yeah, I kind
Nor,
of
nor, nor, nor do I think he should. I think he's the best heel in the business. But even as of late, he's kind of a face. So it's a very interesting time for him to be in the scenario that he's in the position of the card that he's on. So I don't see him dropping the belt anytime soon. Plus, there's this whole shroud of who jumped Switchblade. Could it be Jungle Boy? Could it be that it's really a work with Adam Cole? There's just so much to put together with him that to have him lose would extinguish all those storylines, and I just don't see why they would do that.
with everything that's going on with MJF right now, I would say like it depends on who gets the win in that battle royal to face MJF. That will determine for you like what are the odds he actually takes an L here.
Who would
But
you want
for
to
the
see him
most part,
face?
I'm with Kevin. I don't think he loses.
Who do you want to see him face? I think it's going to be, unless they try to bury Juice, I think it's going to be Juice.
That's what I was thinking too. It's like logical choice would be put Juice as the winner.
Yeah, and of course have him job.
I mean,
Yeah.
we don't really know who all is in the battle royale yet, right? I
No,
mean,
they've
they
announced a
haven't.
few names, but nothing major.
Juice is in it, or
Dustin
Yeah,
Rhodes is
Juice is
coming
in it.
back from
Yep.
Juice, and Justin Rhodes have both been announced there for sure. So he's coming back from a little bit of rehab there. So interesting to see. Be good to see him get back in the ring. And then you have Timeless Tony Storm debuts her newest blockbuster film. I mean, again, I think we can all agree I'm pretty giddy about that.
Yeah, if you've been watching it, she should. You know, it's going to be fun and interesting.
Next up, Penta El Zero Medio versus Jay White. I think that will be a pretty entertaining match, to be honest.
I have no idea why these two are fighting, but it'll be fun.
Which, that goes back to kind of, this is the tone that is set with AEW. You don't really know why they're fighting, but they're fighting, and they're two good wrestlers. And so it's probably not a bad thing. So I just kind of have to get over the fact that there's not this long storyline. Some things out there do have a long storyline, but then a lot of their matches are just kind of, hey, these two guys are here. They're kind of, let's fill something in to get our way to Jay White versus MJF at Full Gear, right? I mean, you're not going to let Jay White lose anytime soon before the buildup. I mean, this is the buildup to it. Mid-November Full Gear. So Jay White's not going to lose this match. So might as well have him have a good match, right? I actually respect this more, to be honest with you. This is two guys who I want to see, who I feel like you would buy a ticket to go see. And so that's why I like that. Next up is we'll hear from Sting. Now, this is something that I texted you guys earlier this week, over the weekend, I think. There is some rumbling that this might be a concern from those diehard fans because, Sting is turning 65, or either has or will be turning 65. So is this kind of the curtain call for him? Is this it? Or is this him just addressing the situation with Darby and the injury there and continuing to further the storyline to continue to wrestle? No retirement speak.
I don't think we're going to see a retirement talk tomorrow night or Wednesday night. I think we're going to continue the angle. and I think that you may see an eventual Adam Copeland Sting match down the road.
Can you see the swerve happening where he goes in there and starts to talk something, but then they do something else to kind of further the angle?
With Sting, I feel like you probably don't do too much of a swerve there. I don't know. I mean, I think you just keep it pretty basic for him.
We have to write Darby off because he's going to climb Everest next year, and I know he's starting to climb the 4 minor mountains prior to that. So he's going to need time off. So how do you put him out? I don't know if his arm was a work broken or was legit broke, but you need to write him off TV. So we'll probably build to that at Full Gear and then fully write him off for the next probably year. That is if he survives Everest. Let's face it, not everybody survives it, and that's a 100% shoot. So we have to write him off TV. So I think that it's going to set the tone tomorrow night. Wednesday night, Sting will come out there and we'll understand more of where that storyline is going in the future to write Darby Allin off.
And then you have Jim Ross sitting down with Nick Wayne and his mother. I know Kevin's really excited about this one. Nick Wayne basically turns and joins Christian Cage, which I thought was a pretty good swerve there, as you mentioned, Drew. I think, not that Nick Wayne is my favorite. Yeah, he's not the reason why I'm buying a ticket, but I do think it's a pretty good storyline going on right now.
I'll say this: Nick Wayne's mom can get it.
Now,
and
Kevin,
we move from one girl to the next.
We started the show off with you having to, address certain things with one person. So now here we go. You're opening up yourself to more legalities, if you will.
Listen, the cease and desist didn't say Nick Wayne's mom, did it? It said CJ
the
Perry.
Cycle continues.
Not yet. Are you trying to collect these like things you could put on your wall?
Right.
And then finally, the ones that have been announced: Kenny Omega, Kyle Fletcher, half of the Aussie Open. This is one that I've fought over back and forth. Maybe it'll be a good match. It probably will be a good match. But let me just speak my feelings here.
Yes,
Kenny
explain
Omega
why you hate Kyle Fletcher.
Let me mute myself. Hold on. Go ahead.
All right. Kenny Omega is my favorite wrestler. Today is his 40th birthday. Happy birthday to Kenny Omega. If you're listening this later on in the week, it's not, but we're recording this on a Monday night.
Welcome to the club.
So Kenny Omega is a guy who, again, you have to preserve him, in my opinion. I want you to put him in the biggest and best matches. And I want him to be back in the heavyweight title scene or in some sort of scene where he's involved in a belt. I am not really interested in him going at it with a 24-year-old guy or anybody that's super young. To me, he's not in the time where he needs to put over young talent. He's in the time where, because here's the thing about Kenny Omega. He's not going to go 50% or 70%. He is going to give 110%, and he is going to continue to bust his tail to give us the best match possible. And I know Kyle Fletcher is going to do the same, but here's my thing. He's 40 years old. He doesn't have like forever to be at his prime marketable heavyweight title scene. And so that's what I'm concerned with is, one, also with the ratings being dropped and they're not looking as good and it seems to be stagnant. You've got a guy who is your butts in seat guy and he's not wrestling against anybody I'm interested in. And it's not just tonight. It seems like, outside of pay-per-views, I don't get much of Kenny Omega, and I miss that because to me, when you go back to Kenny Omega and Don Callis, that was some of the best wrestling that I've ever watched. That period of time with AEW, and we're missing it, and we're losing it with our stars. So I'm getting off my soapbox. That is my point there.
Okay, can I jump in before Kevin gets here? Number one, what did Kevin say about Kenny Omega? that dude is wrestling matches and he's getting out of it, and you can almost read on his face, I don't know how much longer I can keep going at this pace. That is definitely like, since Kevin said it, I've heard other people say the same thing. Like, yeah, you can kind of read it on him. Second thing is, he's kind of in a funk right now. I mean, it's part of the storyline that, like, Kenny isn't winning matches because, since being away from Don Callis and such. And that's the story they're going to kind of tell. So because of that, I just do not see in the foreseeable future Kenny Omega anywhere around the main, title picture.
So let me tell you how Wednesday night's going to go. It's going to go about 12 to 15 minutes. It's going to be a fantastic match. Kyle Fletcher is going to lose, but he is going to be put over by Kenny Omega, because what you're seeing is the making of a superstar 2 to 3 years before it happens. And I know you don't like to hear that because you don't like to see those young talent exposed and getting the ability to become a superstar. But what you're seeing tomorrow night is the evolution of Kyle Fletcher being a main eventer in the very near future. And when I say very near future, 2 to 3 years. With his tag team partner injured, it's now catapulted him into main event status. And I know you don't like it because he's only 24 years old and you don't know who he is or what his backstory is, but the dude can go, and he's going to show that Wednesday night.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's not going to be a good match, but I just feel like that there may be other wrestlers that he can go up against and get Kenny Omega back into the main.
3.5 years ago, who was Orange Cassidy? He was just a gimmick, right?
Yeah. 2019.
Well, I guess he was kind of worked into. He was worked into a storyline with Chris Jericho.
That's the same. Pre AEW, who's MJF?
2 years ago, who was Ricky Starks?
Yeah.
I mean, he started his projection with winning the Diamond Ring Battle Royal last year because he fought MJF. He won it in 2022. Well, actually, I'm happy to hear that Danhausen's coming back. He's finally off injury, and we're going to see him back on TV in the next week or two, which I'm totally excited about. I'm a big Danhausen fan. So if you want to go to comedy wrestling, I'm a big Danhausen fan.
Love that.
But that's right. Who was Sammy Guevara 4 years ago? He was working the independent scene coming out of Shucky Ducky Quack Quack. What's his name?
Booker T.
Yeah, Booker T's school, a relative no one, working at part-time jobs, and now he's, a semi-main eventer. You have got to get young talent on board and in front of people so that in 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 years, the business will continue. In Ricky Starks, yes, he's a bit of a Rock ripoff, but he could become the next Rock. The next Rock was Rocky Maivia in the Nation of Domination. He sucked. He had a fanny pack, and he had a goofy turtleneck with a chain. He got his reps in. He took off, and he became, if not one of the biggest crossover stars in professional wrestling. The same with Hogan. Hogan was a no one in the AWA under was it Nick Goulas? Not Nick Goulas, the other guy there. Anyways, WWE, yeah, Vern Gagne. They stole him away and made him a superstar. You have to start somewhere. Morgan, if we take your philosophy, you're just going to burn your legends out, and there's no one to take over tomorrow.
Time out. I just got to ask one quick question in here. Is this all for Morgan because A, he loves Kenny Omega, or B, he despises Kyle Fletcher?
I don't know much about Kyle Fletcher to despise him anyways, but
he's dating
not
Sky
that
Blue.
I'm a big Aussie Open fan anyways, but
the knock on Kyle Fletcher is he's everybody. He's nobody. He's not. There's nothing about him.
Morgan.
Aussie. See, like that, that's my thing. He has not.
He has to find a character.
I thought he has not built himself to a level that needs to be wrestling Kenny Omega yet.
Morgan.
Like he needs to build up with somebody else.
I don't agree.
He didn't even, like we said, we don't even know who he is. He's just Kyle Fletcher.
I'm giving you heat for Kyle Fletcher right now. He's dating Sky Blue.
Well, now that changes things.
And now you got a
Hey,
reason to hate him.
I want him to lose even worse now.
speaking of Sky Blue, there's two things I want to say. I thought her match with Statlander was fantastic, and I like the idea that they're amassing these women who have been sprayed by Julia Hart and have a little bit of dark side in them now with the whole makeup on their
Who's the
eyes and
other
what have
girl?
you. Isn't it Willow?
Is
Willow's
Oh
Willow.
kind
yeah,
of
she
dark.
might be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a long-term storytelling angle. They're infected, so to speak, and I'm really
I
enjoying
like
that.
it.
And if you
Oh, that's
watched
kind of
Sky
cool.
Blue the other night, she kind of had a little bit of darkness to her during the match,
She
and I thought
was
it was
not.
very well done.
She did not have the pep in her step coming down
That's
to
right.
the ring,
Yep,
and it
that's
was
right.
on purpose. You could tell it was
Yep.
subtle, but you could tell. I liked it.
Long-term storytelling, I'm enjoying it.
She is somebody who has worked her way through, had a couple of squash matches many years ago, and was really just like a once a month talent, maybe once a quarter talent, and is now somebody that is part of the women's rotation that I want to see with Chris Statlander, with you know Britt Baker, Ruby Soho, Tony Storm, Sheeta. She actually is up there. I mean, you know,
If I'm not mistaken, her very first AEW match was All Out 2021 that I was there for because she was a local out of Chicago. So they had her on that card, and remember her, she got a really big pop because she was very popular around that Chicago area. So yeah, fortunate enough to see her first match in AEW.
Kevin, do you speaking of long term storytelling? Is like maybe I'm wrong on this. Like, you catching the vibe from Orange Cassidy's long term storytelling?
Yeah,
Like
not
how
happy that he's got the gold.
he won the title back and he doesn't seem super happy about it. He's just
Yep.
kind of He blows by, kind of blows by his friends, ignoring him, and it's like he just seems like he's in a weird funk.
Where do you think they're going with that? Does he want the ultimate gold belt?
Either that or like I've wondered if it's like is he getting more of an edge, or is this a case of like winning the belt was fine, but that's not what's eating at him? What is eating at him being he can't beat Mox?
Maybe he's pissed that he's got to take the belt through TSA every time he flies. That's a real thing too.
That probably is
it
something
could
to do
be
with it,
that
but that's not
he
part of
is.
the thing.
It could be that he's frustrated with John Moxley, not beating John Moxley because he's out. He kind of got his chance again, de facto, right? One note that I noticed on social media was they did orange confetti when he won last time. They did gold confetti when he won this time. There's some storytelling going on there. We don't know what it is yet, but he also seemed to ignore his best friends. And I'm almost thinking maybe this is a Gollum type thing where he's like infatuated
My
with
precious.
it. Yeah, he's infatuated with that belt because he's won it and he's battled with it for so long. I think you could go either way. You could go the way of he really is not satisfied with the win, like Drew is saying, or you could say that he's overly addicted to the belt because of how long he's had it.
Here's something to pontificate. We now know that Cash Wheeler was not injured, and that
Really?
the idea to drop the belts was FTRs. Now,
Hmm.
they were set up to be in a program with the Young Bucks, and they asked to drop the belts. Again, Cash Wheeler is not hurt, as we initially reported. The truth came out. It was their choice to drop the belts. Why do you think they would want that?
And they wanted it rushed too. So in my opinion, you have to give the belts to the Young Bucks next. I think that they're
Well,
going to win it. So
in
then that
in
that puts the Bucks with the belt, and then an FTR
did I
rematch. Like,
did I talk about last week and how AEW dropped the belt in that scenario? Because if I'm not mistaken, didn't the Young Bucks win a match that had the stipulation of we can challenge the champions anytime we want?
That is correct. We were the
And
ones that are making the assumption the challenge would come in California.
then why wouldn't they drop the belts on Collision? If you're going to rush it, why put it on Starks and Big Bill? What is the logic there? What are we going to do? How are we not getting FTR Bucks for the third time? And why aren't we getting FTR and the Bucks for the third time? Do you think that the Bucks will beat Bill and Starks, and then FTR will beat the Bucks? Do you think
I can
that's
believe
why?
that. I
I
mean,
just don't know.
What's their head to head? Do we know?
Yeah,
Like
one apiece.
so who is due to win? Is there one team that's due to win?
They're each one match apiece. So the Bucks have beat the FTR, and FTR's beating the Bucks.
And I'm assuming FTR was the most recent winner
Sure.
because
yes, that was all in, right?
they
Yeah.
have the belts recently. I don't know. I mean, to me, while I like Starks and Big Bill, I do actually prefer to watch them. They're a team that they're a losable champion, if that makes any
Yes.
sense.
They're
Call it
transitional.
transitional champion.
A
Yes,
transitional, yes.
transitional.
They are a transitional champion. So to your point, I mean, outside of the Bucks, I mean, we all I mean, I don't know about, I'm not going to speak for you guys, but I thought that this was something where there was a problem internally and they were leaving AEW.
Yeah,
So,
and Dax actually says, "Listen, guys, I say top guys out all the time. It means nothing. We're under contract till 2027, and we're home right now." So he did come clean on that.
okay.
But it just in my head, I like to try to make sense out of booking angles, and I just don't know where we're going with this one. Why throw Big Bill and Starks in between the two of them? So I'm assuming the match at Full Gear is off, the Bucks versus FTR, or it's on and there's no belt involved, which I don't know. It's just strange to me. I'm
Does
looking forward to
does
seeing where it goes.
does
I
it
mean, if
add
you don't
more?
know and you're the Oracle, how are we going to know?
Yeah, I like to think I have Tony brain, but this one's definitely got me confused.
I mean, Drew, anything? I mean, anything?
Well, I was gonna say, like, does it change how you would, book the finish if the belt isn't, the tag titles aren't in the picture, or is it just a case of, like you said, like we still got a long way to go before we get the Full Gear. It's like a lot can change between now and then.
We have exactly 30 days from today as we
Yeah,
record this.
a lot can change
Yeah.
in a month.
Yep. Yep.
Which, by the way, on this or last week's BTE, MJF whispered to Omega 26 days, basically saying that he's going to pass his all-time championship, AEW World Championship title reign
Yep.
date in 26 days, which was 7 days ago. So now we're at 19 days. So I feel like that's got to be long term. You're eventually going to get Kenny Omega and MJF eventually, which then you'll be satisfying me with a storyline and a promotion that has Kenny Omega back at the highest of high main event tiers.
I think I dropped you guys a message this week. Impact is doing a pay-per-view. I think it's this weekend or it might be next weekend, but I'm really looking forward to Will Ospreay versus Speedball Mike Bailey. I think that is going to be a 6-star match in the United States. I'm
Will
really, really
Ospreay's at
looking forward to that.
Impact.
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
I'm really looking forward to that match. Morgan, you don't know who Mike Bailey is, but he is I believe he is either Puerto Rican or Dominican. Wrestles barefoot. He looks like the Karate Kid. He's got the Karate Kid mullet. He wrestles like he's a karate champion, but he is very, very good and he's super fast. You pit that against a Will Ospreay who's just as fast. I think you're going to see a 20-minute knockdown drag out fantastic match. I'm looking forward to that. So just briefly speaking on Impact, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's either this weekend or next weekend. So
Speaking of different promotions, well, within AEW, you have Ring of Honor, right? I was looking at their belts, and you've got Samoa Joe has the TV championship, which he's getting close to being the all-time leader in days held the championship. And then you have Eddie Kingston, who is actually the world champion, just, so how do you feel about that? Because those are two guys that, to me, could probably benefit AEW more if they had them on the roster. Those are guys that I feel like that I would be interested in seeing from a casual standpoint. I'm not interested in seeing them in Ring of Honor. I know that Tony is interested in that. and that's his baby. But to me, those are names that I want to see back on Dynamite and Rampage.
Well, let's break that down. We just saw Samoa Joe fight Willie Mack the other night on Collision. And Samoa Joe has got an angle working with MJF where he's coming after MJF. He's sitting down drinking his scotch and smoking a cigar. So
right.
There's your wish come true with Samoa Joe being on AEW. And
so
then
I got to
Eddie
be
Kingston.
More patient.
Well, or you need to be able to watch all product. If you're not watching Saturday night, you're missing out on some things.
Kevin,
yeah, go ahead.
It's like, has Eddie Kingston, since winning the title, even been on Ring of Honor?
On Ring of Honor? Right, exactly. I only see him on, he opened the show the other night. Yeah. He opened the show the other night with him and Suzuki, which, man, I wanted to see more of that. I could watch those guys for 24 hours straight. I think they bring it. There's a lot of believability between them. I enjoyed that match. But yeah, Morgan, to that point, I don't think I've seen Eddie Kingston on a Ring of Honor show. We just saw Willie Mack, who is a TNA Impact former wrestler, carry Joe to like a 15-minute strong big man match. Willie Mack put on a lot of offense. I thought it was a very good match.
That was Willie Mack is underrated talent that they have.
Yeah.
Use him more.
Yeah, you look at that dude, you're like, this guy's comical and he can go.
See, I like this discussion with you guys. That's why I was thinking about it. Looking at MJF, we just mentioned Samoa Joe. There's a long play there. So I'll put that down. Long play. We mentioned Kenny Omega. That's another long play. Jay White is the short term, right? He's the I won't even put him short term. I'll put him current.
Well, we still need to figure out why he got jumped and who jumped him.
Right.
So was it Jungle Boy? That seems to be the prevailing rumor, is that it was Jungle Boy.
Well, that could be.
I personally like the idea that it could have been Britt Baker if the whole Adam is a work, if his injury is a work. And if you look at that build, it's not a very big person.
So. It's not. That would fit pretty well. That's why I'm thinking Jack Perry made sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Adam Cole honestly was the current until this situation got in. So do you feel like Adam Cole, we know Jay White's next up. Do you feel like that? Are you still you're still sticking to your guns that it is not a real injury and Adam Cole is next up after that?
Has to be. I don't see Switchblade taking the belt off of MJF.
No, I don't think that.
If we see Cole again on television, that should be the clearest indicator this is just a work.
You know what, though? They filmed those vignettes at Roderick Strong's house all on the same day. Nothing was changed in the neighborhood when they pulled back and what have you. And I'm not saying that he didn't have surgery. It's always possible. But all of the vignettes you've seen at Roddy's house were all shot in one day.
Well, to that point, Kevin Owens came out and said that he wished his best friend a speedy recovery from his surgery.
They have clarified now that was not Adam Cole he was talking about.
Oh.
Wait a minute.
I forget. It's one of his friends that apparently they said might have just gotten surgery for something cancer involved. But they said, it's like he's kind of clarified.
Wow.
He wasn't
talking
about to do that, though.
Just a coincidence.
You think just a coincidence? You don't think he was really trying to rib the crowd up with that?
Oh, I'm sure it's possible, but good on him for calling out his friend. But
all
yes,
right,
I did hear that.
Real quick on that too. Speaking of coincidences, there's, like I said, we can cover this sometime later, but it's like there is no way WWE. I think they're BSing us. I 100% think they've got CM Punk right now, despite what they're saying.
I don't know, man.
I think we're being worked.
I think you're being worked for sure.
We can talk about that one later, boys.
All right, so we got some good things coming up with MJF in the future and for the current feuds. We got Jay White, possibly Adam Cole, depending on how that injury goes, storyline goes. Got Kenny Omega from BTE, and we've got Samoa Joe from the recent London, basically feud that they were walking down the ring at the same time. So interested to see where it goes with the main event and the the world title, the AEW world title. We'll talk about some more of the belts too. I'm going to have this list down. That's actually the longest running belt right now. All of the other ones, guys, this is something I wanted to mention. So MJF got his belt November 19th, 2022. Everybody else, listen to this. Orange, October this year. Christian Cage, September this year. Hook, well, you can count the FTW. August this year. Starks and Bill, October this year. The Acclaimed and Billy Gunn trios, August this year. Sheeta just last week this year. And Statlander, which would be the next longest, is May of this year. So there's actually 6 belts that changed hands within the last 2 months.
Yeah,
I thought that was
making
interesting.
moves.
I'm good with that. What I don't want to see is a Roman Reigns or a Hulk Hogan or a Bruno Sammartino 12-year run. I'm good with 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 months and moving on.
Yeah,
that's how you make new stars.
So MJF's time to move on, even though with Lux we have a lot of packages here with him. I think you could go through Jay White. I think you could go through Adam Cole. I even think you could go through Samoa Joe and then ultimately get into Kenny Omega where he needs to drop it to my guy.
Always with Omega.
wouldn't and I'm going to leave us with this. We know that Kota Ibushi signed officially with AEW this week, but he's still working injured and he is going to live in Japan. But I sure as hell, let me borrow a line. Boy howdy, would I like to see Kota Ibushi versus Kenny Omega one more time in the United States.
I'll have to see the first time.
Hey, the American audience really hasn't seen it, so
that's right.
I say run it.
I'll have to see the first. It'll be the first time for me. It'll be Kevin's whatever time.
young boy corner with the Oracle.
Well, you know what, guys? I wanted to leave you with this. Sometimes when you're not feeling super, then it's just a kick. And still a wrestling podcast.